Good morning, Twin Cities. Welcome to your Sunday and welcome to Reckoning with Real Estate, a show about the American dream and building a better real estate company. I'm Paige Kale with the Real Estate Collaborative. You can find us at therecollab.com, therecolab.com. All our information is on our website. And we are joined again by we, as in me. I am joined today with Doug Miller.
Can't believe you made me drive all the way back here again. But...
I know. Well, thank you for doing that. I know it's a long drive, so we appreciate it. I appreciate it. And we left the last episode. We left off talking about private listing networks, Garrison Keillor, and clear cooperation policy.
Corruption policy.
Yeah. Doug likes to call it clear corruption policy, which is a policy that the National Association of Realtors put together several years ago now. I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. But Garrison Keillor, the reason so you had said the private listing networks, which is something the big brokers are doing. Compass is the one leading the charge right now, which encourages sellers to keep their listing in-house and let one of their agents sell it, basically, so they can double in the deal and make twice the amount of money. That's a private listing network, and it's being pushed very, very hard right now. But your point, Doug, was, it's not that doesn't have a place. Sometimes it does have a place if it's somebody that's famous and doesn't want people to know their house is on the market, don't want people traipsing through their house on showings. And it made me think of Garrison Keillor because he lived in St. Paul. And when I was with the big box broker, he listed his house with one of the big agents in our office, big agents, high producing agents. And he did not do a private listing. Like, we got to go through his house and see everything. And it's kind of magical. I really enjoyed it. Yes, it was lovely. So to your point, they do have, their place, private listing networks. And even famous people don't always use them, but they can. But it's certainly not a place for just every seller to put their home.
Nobody should ever agree to it.
Nobody should ever agree to it.
With that exception.
Yes. So the fact that Compass is pushing it so hard, and Compass, who did they buy recently? Compass, they bought Anywhere, which is
Berna, Sotheby's, you name it.
Yeah. So
everywhere.
Anywhere and everywhere. So these companies are going to start probably
already have.
Yeah, pushing this idea of a private listing network. So don't do it. It's not in your best interests.
Think of the rule of supply and demand.
Yes.
It just doesn't work to reduce the visibility of your house on the market by limiting the marketing, the number of eyeballs on your house. That does not help you. It hurts you. And I don't care how savvy their marketing is, because I know it is savvy.
Yeah.
They've addressed every objection in advance, and they will convince you that it is the best possible thing for you to do. It's not.
They'll have all sorts of scripts. That's the other thing our industry likes a lot.
Yes.
Scripts.
Yes, they know every objection that you're ever going to think of.
Yep. And this all stems from the clear cooperation policy, otherwise known as the clear corruption policy.
So back in the day, they used to call these pocket listings the same thing, where they would keep the property off the market to try and generate a double commission. Our nonprofit called CARE, CAARE.org, it's a nonprofit charity, addressed this a long, long time ago. And we were getting a lot of interest in this issue. And I think that may be what triggered this. And so NAR's response, National Association of Realtors' response to this, was to create this clear corruption policy. And I don't say it lightly, because they tricked a lot of the media. They tricked a lot of consumer advocates into believing that this policy was going to address pocket listings. And what did it really do?
It encouraged pocket listings.
It did, because they had one exception to their clear cooperation policy, and that was in-house listings, the one thing we were targeting.
Yeah.
But you know who it did target? Were for sale by owner companies. The companies that would help you list your house off the market for 2 weeks or a month, whatever you want to do. People that didn't want to use a realtor. Those companies were now forced to put their properties that they listed on the MLS. So they put out a business in my belief is they put a lot of these companies out of business, and at least that business model.
And
They
that
put,
was the intent, I'm
oh,
guessing.
it had to have been, because there's
Mhm.
no other logical explanation for this. And it was terrible. It had this huge consumer
Mm.
fallout. And so many people don't know how bad this really was for
Yeah,
consumers.
I didn't realize that that had happened.
I talked to a
So
lot of owners of those for sale FISBO companies, and they couldn't believe how bad it was.
and it tracks because the next thing we want to talk about is the lawsuit that settled in 2024 against the National Association of Realtors. That was basically an antitrust lawsuit.
That's right.
Um, and so it tracks that the National Association of Realtors would develop this clear cooperation policy or clear corruption policy to get these guys, the FISBOs, the for sale by owner companies, out because they don't want competition. Is that correct?
Oh, of course not. Yeah, it challenges the commission structure.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
good guys, and
Mm-hmm.
gals, or well, that doesn't sound right either, but
Mm-hmm. Good
help.
people,
Yeah, let's
humans.
go with that.
Yeah.
Um, Helping the consumer, the dedicated individuals who were not going to charge the standard price fixed amount. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
do things the right way. Um, well, if they can't fight them, might as well put them out of business using politics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they did.
Yeah.
You can't have access to the MLS unless you put your properties on the MLS within 24 hours. One exception, though, if you do pocket listings or private network listings, as they're now called, well, you're okay. We're okay with that, even though that had a huge anti-consumer, much more. That was the thing we were fighting.
Yeah.
Those are pocket listings. They're
Yeah.
terrible. So,
Well, and I remember when this CCP, clear cooperation policy, was rolled out. I was at the big broker, and the attorneys came at one of our Tuesday morning meetings and was talking to us about it. And I just remember sitting there going, A, it's not clear. B, it's not cooperation because it's all about being allowed to keep these listings in house and to market them
but
in
that was in the
house.
fine print.
Well,
That,
they did talk about it at the meeting. They
yeah,
did talk about it.
but when you read the policy, that was an exemption. That was a tiny little
It was
footnote.
oh, I thought that was the whole point of it, Doug.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nefarious, and you've been doing this a lot longer than we at REC have in terms of really looking at all of this stuff and asking the questions and seeing kind of the dark underbelly of the real estate industry. But what was your role in? And I know you want to talk about the 6% listing too, but I think this is all going to kind of come together. What was your role in that lawsuit that settled in 2024 against the National Association of Realtors?
And the 4 big box brokers.
Yeah, yeah. What were the four? Which ones were they?
Well, at the time, it was Remax, Anywhere, Home Services, and Keller Williams.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So
And
I mean, you had a role to play in that.
well, I kind of started it.
Mm-hmm.
I originated the case. It was my idea. I had watched for decades many class action lawyers fail when they went up
Mm-hmm.
against the Realtor Association. You really need to understand their business practices. You can't just be a
Mm-hmm.
good lawyer and go after these individuals or this industry, because they will paper you to death, and they will find all the loopholes. You have to know what those loopholes are before you even get started.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen error after error after error get these cases get thrown out. And I finally, after decades of watching them fail trying to go after the commission structure, I came up with the idea as to why it was such a bad thing. And so basically we said that when the multiple listing service allows brokers to collect 6% and offer 2.7, and I'm saying these are the standard price fixed amounts they're
They
using.
sure
These
are.
are price fixed
They
amounts.
sure are.
Because I think I found it was like 98% of all the MLS listings out there were offering 2.7%. I still have
Mhm.
screenshots from the
Mhm.
MLS. And when you offer that money to buyer brokers, regardless of their service, their the level of service, regardless of their expertise,
How many years they've been doing it,
yeah,
all of it.
you are
Yeah.
artificially inflating the buyer brokerage fee by doing
Yes.
that.
Yes.
There's no reason why anybody should be offering your competitor's realtor fiduciary, offering somebody else's fiduciary money. When you offer someone else's fiduciary money, it's commercial bribery. It's actually a criminal act. Imagine if you went to the other lawyer in a case you're suing out and said, hey, if you settle this case tomorrow, I'm going to give you uh, a bonus of this amount of money. Well, that's buyer broker bonuses, but it's the same kind of thing.
Sure.
You can't do it. You should not be setting the fees of your competitors.
Right.
When you set the fees of your competitors, it's price fixing. The jury took 2.5 hours to come down with a decision in our favor. And
what was the amount? Remind me of the amount of damages.
Well, it should have been like $100 to $200 billion.
Sure.
But they didn't have that much money. It's all been dispersed. And so since these big brokers in NAR didn't have the money, well, you got to settle for what they have. We went through their financials and when you go through the financials and all you can find is $1 billion between all of them, that's what you have to settle for.
So was that the settlement, was $1 billion, or?
Between all of them, it worked out to about $1 billion, which should have been tripled. So actually, I think at the end of the day, it was, even with a settlement, it should have been like a $5 billion settlement, but if they don't have the money, you're not going to get it.
Right.
So if you bankrupt them, you're going to get nothing for your clients. And so this is what the cards you dealt. That's what you have to do. So we focused very hard on changing the system, and we were successful. We thought we made it. The entire industry basically agreed to no longer publish buyer broker fees in the MLS. That's what our case was about. When you publish it in the MLS, you are engaged in price fixing. So our case was pretty narrow. It wasn't meant to be the last word on this. It was meant to open the floodgates and get things started in the right direction, and hoped that maybe the realtors might do the right thing. And so they can no longer advertise.
I'm giggling on the other side of the table.
They can no longer offer commissions on the MLS. So this wasn't just about the MLS. It was about the price fixing.
Right.
You're setting your competitors' fees. So what was their solution? They would start offering the same money off the MLS.
Yep, they sure are.
And not all of them. In fact, I would say maybe half are not doing that.
Okay. Well, that's encouraging. That's something.
And then you get the Minnesota Association of Realtors that comes in, which is run by all these brokers, and they're designing fee agreements for all these competitors. Standard fee agreements. Think of another industry where there are standard fee agreements.
What do you mean standard fee? Like
the listing contract, the buyer broker contract. They have standard fee agreements in that their membership can use, all these competitors, and they contain clauses that don't belong there. Anything that can be negotiated, if it's put into a standard form that's available to all these competitors, that's another anti-competitive activity, in my opinion. And so, did we need? Okay.
I think we're gonna go to break here. And we're going to come back in about 3 minutes. You're listening to Reckoning with Real Estate, and we will catch you on the other side.
Oh, what a sight. Wrecking balls in flight, bringing down the light.
Welcome back to Reckoning with Real Estate. I'm Paige Kale, and we are going to continue our conversation with Doug Miller, who is talking about the 2024 settlement against the National Association of Realtors. It was an antitrust settlement because the claim was, and the jury decided in 2.5 hours that it was true, that realtors were involved in price fixing. Basically.
Essentially, yeah. It was artificially inflating the buyer broker fee.
Yep, that 2.7% in our market, 2.7%.
Yeah, all you need to do is go to Rochester and it's 3, or you go to Colorado and it's 2.5, or it's a national trend. It's geographically limited.
Yeah, so the numbers are a little different depending on where you are in the country, but the trend was the same. That
yes,
at the time of listing, the seller's broker would say, okay, you're going to pay us 6% and we're going to take 2.7% of that and pay out your competitor.
And the reason our fee is so high is because we have to share our fee with buyer brokers.
Right.
Except we don't want to share that fee. We want to keep both. And so by charging 6, it allows us to keep both sides of the commission.
Yeah. And to have control over it.
Yeah. So you should never, ever agree to allow your broker to share the commission.
And so post settlement, so the settlement was a big number, $1 billion. and you think it should have been more,
A
but
lot more. Yeah.
but $1 billion is a lot to most of us. But now what we're finding almost 2 years later is, I mean, there are workarounds. And what are those workarounds? And what are people being told?
The workarounds are nationwide, and it's basically all these competitors have gotten together at the realtor associations and designed clauses in their fee agreements. So a fee agreement would be like a listing contract or a buyer representation contract. That's where the fees are set out. And they have a whole list of scripts that they have to go along with these things. And it's the stuff they're not telling you that you really need to know about. So, for example, they're going to say, you are not going to get people to show your house unless you offer their buyer brokers money.
Mm-hmm.
That
False.
is, it's
False.
right. It is a lie.
Yeah.
Realtors have been trained to say this. Good people are saying this because they've been told by their brokers, this is what you tell them.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely untrue. Part of the settlement is that buyer brokers have to set their fee with their buyers before they show them any properties. And if they set their fee at a flat fee or whatever it may be, they're not allowed to collect more than that from any other source.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a seller, you don't know how much that buyer broker and buyer have agreed. So if you continue to offer them 2.7% and that buyer broker is charging $5,000 and you're offering them more than you should, well, what happens
To the difference.
exactly? And the way these standard form
The
listing
standard
contracts,
forms that are written by the state association in conjunction with all the big guys.
yeah, it's all the competitors got together and they drafted these clauses. And I was shocked when I finally ran the analysis on this thing and really looked hard at these agreements. It says that if you offer 3% to the buyer broker, and in the purchase agreement, the buyer broker, because that's where the fees are now negotiated. If the buyer can't afford to pay their buyer broker, they ask the seller to pay it
Mm-hmm.
in the purchase agreement.
In the purchase agreement, yep.
But if that buyer asks for, let's say 2%, just to make the numbers easier, and let's say the listing broker is offering 3%,
Mm-hmm.
what happens to that extra 1%? Well, the reason the buyer's only asking for 2%, a lot of times, is they're trying to, in a competitive multiple offer situation, they want their offer to be more appealing to the seller.
Yeah.
They're improving the seller's net. No,
Mm-hmm.
they're not. What's happening is that extra 1%, if you read the fine print, you run it through Gemini or Chat GPT if you want that form.
Yeah.
What it says is that 1% goes to the listing broker.
Mm-hmm.
That amazes me that they could be that emboldened to put that in a standard form fee agreement that is shared with all the competitors in the state. How could they even do that and think they're not going to get sued? And I think they don't care about getting sued. And the reason for that is, look what happened in our case. Should have been a $50 to $200 billion case.
Mm-hmm.
They paid out $1 billion. How much money did they take in?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if
That's
they
drop in the bucket.
if they earned $200 billion and they only got to pay out $1 billion, it's a cost of doing business.
Yeah,
That's, in my opinion, what's going on here. They don't care about getting sued.
it's the cost of doing business, right?
I cannot find a legitimate reason for this clause in these agreements. And so, and it's real easy. There is no good reason to offer money to buyer brokers. They have already agreed
Right.
to how much they're going to get paid. And so let them put it in the purchase agreement. If
Right.
they ask for $5,000, if they ask for 2%, if they ask for 2.7 or 3%, it's in the purchase agreement. The buyer is asking the seller to pay
Right.
that money.
You and I talked about this a bit ago, but a couple months ago. But at the beginning of the year, I went back through all of the offers that we got on our listings last year. And I think there were like 40 or 50 of them. And I would say, I think it was like 96% were 2.5%. And there was only
2.7, you mean?
No, it was 2.5%. So 96% of them were 2.5% or above. The vast majority were 2.7%, and there were a couple 3%. But 96%. So because it's such a big industry, I do think things are going to change, but it's going to take a long time.
Not with forms like this. These
Well,
forms are
yeah.
designed to keep it at the status quo.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's exactly what it does. If you're working with a realtor, you cannot work with a realtor that is saying, well, we have to offer money to the buyer broker because no one will show your house. That is simply not true.
Right.
All you need to do, yeah. And everybody knows this because when we
Right.
list a property, we get offers all the time. And each time we get one, it says at
Mhm.
line 405 through 407 of the purchase agreement how much the buyer broker wants to get paid. And it
Yeah.
goes right into our net sheet with the seller. And then the seller decides if that's okay or not.
Yeah.
Nobody even calls anymore and
No,
asks,
they
how much are
don't.
you offering? It just
Nope.
doesn't work that way. It
Nope.
is an outright lie
Yeah.
to tell someone that no one's going to show your house.
Well, and here's what's really fun about what you and I do in terms of educating people about how nefarious, for lack of a better word, the real estate industry is and all the forms are and how there's so much collusion going on in organized real estate. I have had 2 situations in the past month where clients have actually come to me and said, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, because I've educated them so well
Yeah.
about kind of how traditional big box brokers work and how rec works or how your company works. The education piece, I think, is huge so that the consumer understands.
But you're fighting this machine, this marketing machine, where they have
Mhm.
all these savvy scripted lines
Mhm.
that sound like they make sense
Yeah.
until you really tear them apart. I've had clients come back to me and say, well, I'm going with a traditional realtor because they told me no one's going to show my house unless I offer.
Oh, really?
Oh my God. It's
Yeah.
very hard to educate people on this. Okay. I am one of the top 100 realtors in Minnesota, according to one of these
Yeah.
organizations. I do a lot of transactions, both on the list side and on the buyer broker side. And I can tell you these scripted lines are false. And and don't ever sign an arbitration agreement if you want to be part of a class action lawsuit.
Yeah.
That's the other problem is they have their clients sign these arbitration
Yep, they
agreements.
sure do.
So they have
They
found
don't even have them sign separate ones. Often they're within, like the big box broker I was with, it was within the buyer contract.
Yeah.
It was within the listing agreement. It wasn't even a separate
run
thing.
away.
Yeah.
If you see arbitration agreements, these are not your typical arbitrations. You can always decide about arbitration later on. There's no reason to agree to it early on. If a
Mhm.
broker or an agent is telling you that it's a good idea to sign the arbitration agreement and they're advising you as to why, that's the unauthorized practice of law. They are
Mhm.
not, then it's self-serving too. They
Mhm.
should not be advising you on something
Mhm.
like arbitration. And I'm an attorney. You're not my client, all you people out there. But I can tell you, in my opinion, no one should ever sign an arbitration agreement.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that as well. So do you ever see a time in your practice where you're not going to have to pay all the dues and all, you're not going to have to sign up to be a realtor because you're going to figure out how to, because the whole thing with signing up to be a realtor is because you need access to the MLS and the forms.
You have to, if I use the
So-
Bar Association forms in a transaction, the realtors' heads will explode. They will tell me, no, we can't use that form, and they'll counter us on their own form, putting
all
their
the
sellers
words
at
are
risk.
different. The sentences are different. Yeah.
I can't do it. I have to use their forms if I want a smooth transaction. It's not worth arguing about forms.
Yeah. So you just have to be part, because we have this conversation within REC all the time. How can we extricate ourselves from the associations?
I sit on the forms committee for the Bar Association. Nobody will use their forms.
Yeah.
Except attorneys.
Yeah.
And it is made available to consumers for free.
Yep.
So somebody's doing a deal outside of realtors, that's what you do. But these forms should be available to everybody.
Mhm.
Listings should not be owned by the realtors
No, they
or the
should
brokers.
not.
There's all kinds of problems in this industry that are designed to.
The commodification of housing, and realtors just take it to a whole different level. And realtors are maybe part of the problem with the commodification of
You
housing.
just go to another country and it's 1%
right
to sell a house.
Right. What is the name of your company, Doug?
Well, it depends where we're trying to. We're talking about rebranding, but it's attorneyre.com. It's Miller Law doing business as attorneyre.com.
Okay.
And my brokerage license is under my name, but it's a law practice. And we do everything the realtors do for half as much money.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I'm trying to prove to other attorneys that they can do the same thing as a realtor and charge half as much and still make more than their hourly rate.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to share this business model before I retire.
Mm-hmm. And you said there are other attorneys in the Twin Cities that are kind of doing what you're doing, following your lead a little bit.
Yeah, I've got Dan Eaton over at Waypoint Law. He's doing it now.
Yep.
And I think I just got an email from somebody else who wants to get started doing it. I've got an attorney working with me who's doing it. And yeah, attorneys are contacting me all the time to get started. So.
Okay. That's great. And I mean, listeners, we want you to use the Real Estate Collaborative, but actually we want you to have choice. We want you to have choice, quite honestly.
I'm a big fan of what you're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I'm a big fan of yours, as you know, and I find it just fascinating that, yeah. And I know you have another lawsuit in mind, and we can talk about that some other time.
20 or 30.
20 or 30, yeah. So thank you for listening in, everyone. And you can find us on all the podcasts, and we'll be back here on AM 950 at 11 o'clock next Sunday.